So this is the Defender 4-door access controller, internal training and demo, just to give you guys an introduction to it and make sure you're aware of what it's capable of. So the first question, what is the Defender and what does it do? It is a 4-door access control system that can be paired with the weakened output from all EMX readers. It can directly control up to 4 access points via mag locks or strike locks directly. If you have a larger system such as a gate or overhead door, it can act as a weakened bridge for operators that have no weakened interface of their own. And it can also act as a logging device that tracks which credentials were seen by the connected readers. It comes with credential management and database PC software that works on the Windows operating system only. And it is programmed and connected to via an Ethernet cable and can be always accessible over internet or a local network, or left in an offline standalone installation where there's no network connectivity. Basically, what the Defender does is it'll monitor its 4 weakened inputs, which are 26-bit weakened only, and references the incoming data to a user program database to determine if access should be permitted through a door. If permitted, when a credential is scanned, a relay will be triggered. Each door channel also has a free exit push button that can be wired in for triggering and open without valid credentials. And there is also door position sensor inputs, which can log the position of the door when reads happen or detect events where the door was opened without a valid read within some reasonable time.
Matt,
Yeah.
one common question the team's going to get all the time is, could we use 2 of these to program 8 doors?
Yes. Yeah, easily. So just in your database software, you can add as many controllers as you really want. There's no limit to it for an install. So I'd say the only limit is there's 20,000 tags per Defender. That's the memory in it. So you can't have more credentials than that for a door. So I don't know if that'll be problematic for any large installs, but as far as the number of Defenders, you can always get more of them if you need to expand that. So we offer 2 different versions of the Defender. There's the Defender regular, just board only, and we also offer the Defender kit. Really, the big difference is the Defender kit comes with the Tray 900 power supply that can power the Defender itself and 1 connected EMX long-range reader. If you're using the short-range prox readers, you can connect up to 4 of them, but the EMX readers have a high current draw, so you can only connect 1 of those safely without pushing your current budget. The kit also comes with a lockable IP65 clear cover housing, with the power supply already mounted in there, and it has a metal swing plate for easy access to the wiring during your install and service. The regular board just does not have that power supply or that housing. The board is the exact same. The functionality is the exact same. The software that comes with it is the exact same. The only thing different is the power supply and the IP65 clear cover housing.
So Matt, the power supply is the same power supply we offer with the readers. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes.
And that will also power a reader.
Yes. So with the current budget we have on there, we should probably only recommend 1 long-range reader and the Defender on that power supply at a time. I've heard of somebody that has hooked 2 of them and they didn't have any issues, but they're probably pushing the limits of that power supply. So safely, I would only recommend using that power supply with 1 long-range reader. If you're using the short-range prox ones, the current draw on those is much lower, so you can connect more of those at once, all via the same supply. But if they're trying to use multiple long-range readers, they're going to need to get more than 1 supply.
What about like mag locks and things like that?
Yes.
Matt, can you explain what you mean when you say current budget?
So the power supply, the Tray 900 PS12035, it has a current output limit of, I think, 3.5 amps. And our readers, when they're on at like their strongest and most current intensive part of their read, I think they draw 1.8 amps. So if you had 2 readers that were on reading at the same time, you'd be pushing the power supply past its limit, and you'd probably have some ill effects from that. So that's basically what you'd go over the limit for what the power supply could handle if you had 2 of them in there. So just to go over the wiring for what an installer would have to look at. On the left, we have the weakened and free exit inputs. So weakened is literally any sort of weakened reader, whether it's EMX or some aftermarket one. Any of them will really work as long as it's 26-bit weakened. The free exit input is any sort of normally open push button can be used to trigger that.
Or a passive
Like some other sensor that can detect
Yeah,
it.
like the passive sensor we have above the door, same thing.
Correct. It's just looking for a normally open input. So any closing contact can trigger that for a free exit without a credential. And then on the right there, you have the power input, the relay output, and the door position input. The relay output is what will go to your mag lock or strike lock or an operator input. And the door position sensor is really a reed switch, which is a magnetic switch that will close the contact when a magnet comes close to it, so that it really the magnet will be mounted on the door, and then the reed switch is mounted near the door somehow. And then when the door is closed, it can sense that position and it logs it within the Defender.
Yeah, so a reed switch is just there to tell you what position the door is in, whether it's closed or open.
Correct. And besides the power input on this diagram right here, there's 4 sets of all these connections, one for each of the door inputs. So this, when you look at the board, you see all the terminals. It looks pretty intimidating with how much there is there. But really, when you break it down into individual channels, this is really all there is per door. The Credential and database software allows on-demand management of always connected readers. And by always connected, I mean like connected over the internet, permanently connected, not something that gets disconnected. And it also allows the pre-programming of offline installs that do not have always online functionality. All features of the manual or of the software are documented in the operating instructions. It's quite long. I think it's 35 pages sort. Our quick start guide simplifies the process of getting your PC and the board set up and connected and covers all required functional steps to get the Defender going. So I would always recommend, if the first time someone's working with this, go to the quick start guide, ignore the manual. There's a lot of bloat in the manual that'll probably distract you. And the quick start guide's a lot more of a guided process to having nothing to getting it running.
Just to clarify, they say four-door controller.
Sorry.
Will work with any reader with 26 bit Wiegand output. It doesn't have to be an EMX reader.
Any reader, yep.
And our readers will work with any controller. It doesn't have to be an EMX controller.
So can you guys see my webcam pretty good here now? Like see the screen and all that and the Defender boards in there?
Yes.
All right. So now I'm just going to step you through the process of what it really takes to get one of these set up. So really start with nothing. This is the software. I don't know if you can see that icon, the little key. It's called Management Center V6.9.
So you download that right from our website.
Yep, you get it from EMX's website or the Old Tray website. There's a little bit of an install process when you first download it. So I kind of did that already just so we didn't have to wait. So password will always by default be ABC123 to log in. And you'll have this little pop-up menu here on the left, but I always end up closing it out. First thing to do with the Defender is you really want to make sure that you can get connected to it and actually communicate between your computer and the Defender itself. The easiest way to do that, especially on a laptop, is to go to your Wi-Fi settings right here and just turn it off. Simply doing that will usually allow you to connect to the board instantly, first try every single time.
Over Ethernet connection.
Over an Ethernet connection, yes. You can't see that to people on the webcam, but there's a Ethernet cable going from the Defender to my laptop through an Ethernet adapter even plugged in. And that's what this unidentified network, no internet is showing right here. That's the Defender connection. But if the Wi-Fi was turned on, it would cause IP conflicts and cause it to not connect. So it's a vital step that they turn off the Wi-Fi. That'll make it happen most times. If you still have issues after this, then you might have to go into your Windows firewall or any antiviruses you have on your PC and turn those off as well. But I don't have any of those on here, so that won't be an issue. So once your Wi-Fi is off, you can come into the software. You click on the new tab under the controller tab. So on the left over here, just so you know where I'm at, you would double click controller. And then you go to new. You'll have a little pop-up menu that shows add controller. So there's a little bit of information in here. The controller number, that's not really important. That's just a generic label for which controller in your list that you have. Your serial number, that is the number that is present directly on the Defender itself. So for this one, it's 64674. So it's a 5-digit code, and that's how it identifies whether or not it was a 2-door or a 4-door. And that's actually how it communicates with it over Ethernet. It uses that serial number to identify it. So if you type that in wrong, it will not work. Description, that's just some generic description you can type in there for yourself to better label it. You want to make sure you have active checked, and then you want to make sure you select small network when you're connecting in this manner. If you're doing a more complicated install where you're actually connecting to something that's always connected online, you would do medium or large network, but then you kind of have to dig into your router settings and you have to properly forward the port or the IP of the Defender to the port 60,000, which requires a little bit of IT expertise to do and even access to your router. So for some people, that's just not simply possible. So that's kind of why we guide people to do it, this disconnecting from the Wi-Fi, wired Ethernet cord up to it directly, just to be able to get it set up and running. After you click next for small network, it'll prompt you with this menu. This is just where you select which door inputs you want to be active. For this example, I'm just going to leave them all open. But if you knew that you didn't need, your reader ports 3 and 4, you could just simply disable them here and they won't show in your software, which the benefit of that is you won't have any extra stuff that's kind of just noise and can distract you. So once you click OK, you'll see it populated in my list as controller number 1, serial number. I didn't type anything for the description, small channel type, and then 1, you can see the doors that are available through that controller. Now, the end all be all to know that you've actually connected to your Defender is if you click the search.net button up here in the top right, it'll pop up this net controller config menu. And if you can see your Defender's information in there, you're connected. If you don't see this line present with your serial number, you really haven't got the connection figured out and it's still not actually connected. This is really the first step everybody should go to, because if you can't get connected, you can't do anything else. So everybody, they need to get to this step before they even try to go any further. If you try to march on past this and you start doing other stuff, you'll just have issues down the road. So this one is connected just because we can see it. There's nothing else that needs to be done in here. It's just to confirm the connection. Next down the tab is a department tab. This one's not too important, so we won't dive into it too much. This is just some way that you can filter the credentials in this software and apply blanket updates to specific sets of them as needed.
So for example, first shift, second shift,
exactly,
third shift might be different departments, or sales, accounting, whatever.
Yeah, exactly. If you have a room that only engineering can get to, you can kind of update their credentials in a batch if you bin them like this. You don't have to use it. It's completely optional. It's just up to the installer if they want to keep everything nice and organized.
And our sections, where it says new section, a section is underneath a department. So it's...
I believe that's another subset of the department.
So it would be like second shift surface mount operators, second shift lighted through hole operators.
Yep, just like that. And then you just bin them however you'd like.
So you can authorize their group of credentials to only access the door during certain times of the day or days of the week, for instance.
Correct, yeah, and I'll show you that in the next section. So the next section is the personnel tab. This is really the credential tab. This is where you log pretty much who's allowed in and out. Well, not really that. You just log the credentials that are within your database. So there's a couple different ways to do it. If you just click new, you can kind of brute force and go through all the data fields. There's quite a bit that you can fill out in each credential of back-end information to know who's who and what's what. You can also adjust the deactivate date here. But that's kind of tedious to do in a time-efficient manner because you're doing this all one at a time. My preferred method is add by reader. So there's an add by reader button up here. When you click on it, it'll ask you which reader or really which Defender you want to add through. It'll pop up this menu, and then I have a proxy reader scanner right here. So as I scan these cards, you'll see them populate in the list. And anything that comes in on the Wiegand inputs, when you have this menu open, will just get added to the list. And once you've scanned all your credentials, I only have 5 of them here. You can even pre-bin them to, a different section or engineering shift if you want to do that as you're scanning them in, just for sorting them. But you just click OK, and then it'll add the 5 users to your database right here. And then you can go back into them and further edit the information. Like if you just wanted to have a bunch of credentials on hand, and then every time somebody comes in, you get a new employee, you go update the information in here, give them the card, and then, adjust their deactivate date.
Is it solely MyFair or is it HID as well?
For these cards?
Yeah.
Well, it's any reader, right? So it really depends on what the reader hooked up to.
Okay.
It's all 26-bit Wiegand. That's the real compatibility thing. Yeah.
26-bit. Okay.
So when you add a bunch of cards in here, the one thing that people will have to remember to do is it puts the deactivate date. So, like how long this credential will be valid for, it starts it at some time in the past. So the easiest way after you've added so many credentials is use this batch update function up here. So right here, you can select really who you're trying to adjust. So if I had an engineering department, you can adjust only them. For this one, I don't have them bin, so I'm just going to be doing all and then all users. Down here, you click valid date. then you just got to select on the calendar where do you want them to be able to access this door to. So if you knew you only wanted somebody on site to be there for a week, you just, only give them a week time after that. After this time expires, their cards will not activate the Defender anymore. So, most installs, I just tell people to go many years out into the future. I think you can even and you can also just type it in directly here, 2028. So now if I click on these cards, you'll see those cards are all valid till 2080. So, they'll never deactivate. Any questions on this up till now?
Is there an infinite?
I don't think
Validation
so. And if you try to put any date and time for the next century, it kind of resets. So I think the latest date you can do is 2099, which I imagine an access control system, they'll probably be revisiting it before then. So, so now that we have our personnel added, we have our reader added. Really, now we need to give privilege to the cards. Well, actually, let me step back for a second. There's one other thing to do. When you first connect to your reader or to the Defender doesn't know the date and time that it is currently at. You have to use this software to send to it. So it's always a good idea. The first thing to do is to highlight all these doors on this adjust time setting over here on the left. Highlight them and just click adjust time, and that'll just use your computer's the current internet time on your PC. It'll send it to the board, and that's now what the board thinks the current date and time is. If you don't do that, nothing will work. There is an error light on the Defender that will fire off and just blink constantly until you do this. And we've already had a couple people on tech support that have been spooked out by that. But that's really all it is. It's just the Defender hasn't been programmed with the date and time yet. So there's, out of the box error light blinking, it's not really an issue. It's just they haven't gone through the process yet. So now going back to access privilege, this is where we're going to be giving privilege to our credentials to go through certain doors. So once you click on this tab over here, access privilege, you click change privilege at the top, you'll get a menu that pops up. Down here in the bottom left, we have the doors that we want to permit them through. So for this example, let's permit all these credentials through door 1, 3, and 4. That's what they're showing. So if there was a reader connected to door 2 would not activate for any of these credentials. It would just, no relay would trigger. It would say invalid privilege. Nothing would happen. Doors 1, 3, and 4 will all allow these people through. After you've set this up and configured it how you want to do this top right green button. If you do this button on the left, that'll update the database locally, but it won't update the Defender that you're connected to. This one on the right is the key one to press. If you don't press this one, nothing will happen. It won't set up correctly. It's going to take probably like 10 seconds to send it. It'll tell you the number of records added, which is the number of credentials you've privileged times the number of doors. Click OK, exit. And then in reality, we're good to go now. The Defender is set up, and if they hook that up to an input or a maglock, these credentials would be working. They would have a working setup with the relay triggering for valid entrances. One other thing that we can kind of dig into is the monitor tab. So over here, if you highlight all 4 of your doors and go to the monitor tab, it'll continuously give you a log of who has scanned in, the ID and the timestamp of when that happened. This is part of the audit trail. This functionality right here is really the live viewing of the audit trail. You see what happens in real time. It doesn't give you a glimpse into the past, but it's still useful that you can see allowable accesses. So something I'm going to do here, I'm going to unwire the reader from port 1, which is where we privileged people, these tags that go in through door 1, but we didn't through door 2. So now if I scan a card on door 2, you'll see you get a different error message that kind of alerts that someone tried to get into the door that they weren't supposed to. Also, while you're in this stage, you can see the position of the door. So I only have a switch, well, really, I just have a short kind of simulating a read switch wired into door 1. You can see that it's closed, and you can see the other ones are open, just because I have nothing wired into it at the moment. If I remove my short on the read switch input, you'll see the door opens, and it'll tell you the active state of that door.
We have, maybe you're going there next, do we have the ability to look historically who came through what doors when?
Yes. So the way to do that, it's this query card records down here. So you'll do a download process, then you go to the query card records, and now you'll see it present. You'll see everything that was happening during that time. So it's a little misleading there. It's like, maybe we'll make sure that people understand that, but you do a download and then you can kind of filter it through with this card records tab based upon these settings up here.
And you can pick a specific user or department and see who.
Precisely, yeah. And that's pretty much it for, getting nothing set up to getting it set up. This, for an installer, if they were able to get to this point, they can get it set up in most applications that they would need, and then it's just up to them to do whatever else they would like to customize it with. There's a whole extended functions tab with a lot more features and a lot more fun stuff that you can play with, such as the door forced opens events. So you can, log when someone tried to break in, if the door was open without a valid read. You can hook up an IP camera to have this program take pictures and then store them on your PC every time a tag read occurs or a bad tag read occurs. There's a lot of little just interface adjustments that you can make to either limit or add what the monitoring PC station can see. You can add in time profiles, different ways to trigger the door from the software itself, different PIN keys that can kind of limit access to the software if this is something that's actually on site. The time profile is probably the most critical thing that's in these extended functions. Time profile lets you set certain times of the day that people will be allowed into it. So say you only want to let engineering into the building around 8 o'clock. You would use the time profile setting to do that. So you would come in here, enable it, click OK. It's going to take a minute to load, and then you'll have to restart your software. And now that I enabled the time profile, there's a new tab over here on the left with functionality to do exactly what I described. Set up certain periods of times or certain days that people can access the door and get in. So,
Does the time and date adjust for daylight savings automatically?
I'm honestly not sure. I would imagine.
It would seem doubtful.
I don't think so, especially if it's offline. I would not think so. There's ways that you can set it up so it'll automatically, if you have an always connected system, you can set it up so this will update him periodically on a set schedule. If you did that and your computer was set for the correct daylight saving time setting, then it would work. But if it was an offline system, most likely no. Someone would probably have to come and adjust it. With that said, I don't know for certain, so I'd have to look into that. And that's about it. There's a lot more. There's a lot more features in the extended functions that people can dive into, but from a base level, this is pretty much it.
So at what point in time, Matt, would you recommend just the board versus the kit?
Outdoors versus indoors would be a key one.
Okay.
So if you were mounting the kit with the plastic enclosure, which is the only kit we offer currently with Defender, and they were installing it out by a gate, they may be interested in having the
kit.
outdoor controller.
Oh, outdoor. Okay.
All of our door controllers for this building are mounted indoors in the server room.
Okay.
And they're all open face just like that. So you don't need an enclosure.
Okay.
If that makes sense. And that's pretty common if the door controller is going to be mounted in the server room or security room, sometimes it's called.
Okay. Is this
I'm sorry, go ahead.
compatible cloud-based or?
Yes. So, well, by cloud, you're able to connect your database PC to the Defender over the internet. Yes.
Okay.
So you can do it in a local network where we're right next to it,
Right.
or you can do it over the internet where this is really at a different place in location.
Right.
It's just when you do that, there's a lot of networking kind of little nitpicks
that you have.
Yes, exactly. Which isn't always achievable for most people that aren't IT familiar with, digging into a router and changing all the configuration in there can be a little intense sometimes. And, if it's an enterprise system where it's actually a business, they might not even have access to get to that stuff to make those configuration changes themselves. And they're kind of relying on another IT department to do that for them. So, depending upon who's actually working with it, they might not always actually be able to do a full internet install, but it just really depends on what, the installer is capable of.
My last and final question. Is this new upgraded system compatible or interchangeable with our previous?
With the 2-door Defender,
Yes,
they're almost exactly the same. It's just this one has 4 relays instead of 2 relays.
2 relays.
Almost everything I went through with this was the exact same for the old Defender. The only thing that's different is every reader port on here has its own individual relay, where the 2-door, the 2 reader ports on the same side would activate 1 relay. So, really that was only 1 door that you control through that.
Okay.